Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here, and it feels very special to be in this part of the world. Can you all hear in the back row? Okay, I love microphones. Actually, I was going to start with with a new poem that's more of a holiday piece than any of that, dreaded truth-telling that I've been credited with. You might recognize this creature. This is called a Fang-tooth Snake-eel, who's been in the news recently when washed up on the shore after the hurricane in Houston. A fang-tooth snake-eel is her own shadow, a thick, dark ribbon of useful slime, who waits under cover in her mud-soft burrow, showing nothing but her long, flat head, small eyes set low, tongue a fleshly lure she waggles worm-like to invite the hungry, small swimmer to enter. A second's regret as he sees her face, too late. Impaled, engulfed, her meal. She lives to make more fanged snake-eel babies, freckled as she, streamlined, slippery. But she's no one's B-movie, she and her children, of whom we know less than we do of the moon. And I'm going to go back to the very beginning, since Professor Devaney's class read a new and selected that goes back to my earliest work. I'm going to read a few poems from each of 3 decades. So this is called Origins, and it's actually not from the first book, but it's in my body, but was originally published in A Long Sound, which came out in 1986, and the conversation at dinner last night about Harvey Weinstein and all that has been discussed since that got so much media attention reminded me of this poem. It's called Origins. It was a party. I had on my party dress. There was something wrong in Grandpa's friend's throat. I kept him waiting outside the bathroom while I read Mother West Wind When stories. When Mama yelled at me to make it fast, I wiped, I flushed, I came out on the landing holding the blue book behind my back. His lighted cigar was the red eye of an animal. He reached a hand up, big, spotted like an animal, under the short skirt of my party dress. I felt pleasure and I felt afraid of the hand. Nice girl, he was smiling, and the red eye shook and smelled like a cigar. This was at the top of some stairs. What house was it? Were there stairs on Westminster Avenue? How little was I? I remember, little. I said, Mama, the man touched me. No, she said. She was worried about the party. She was serving a tray of green things and pink things. She explained the facts to me quickly. No, she said, the man is a nice old man. And probably intentionally, although I don't remember what happened when we were putting this book together, the poem Self-Doubt is on the opposite page. Self-doubt. The sky cracks along a branch of sycamore. Its fault. The sidewalk, split in jigsaw puzzle pieces by the roots, lifts oblique to itself. The foreground, leaves and bark, collapses like a sinkhole, while the sky's crazed blue bulges like heavy crockery. Everything seems to have 2 sides. I could be wrong. And I'll read some poems from a decade after the time that those were written. This is called Legacy. And it's one of those, sometimes we write what we have yet to find out. And I thought I knew what was occasioning this poem, but it somehow feels even truer for me now than at the time, since I'm older, 10 years older than when I wrote it. Wait, never mind. Arithmetic, terrible. It's more than 10 years. Okay. Legacy. When my mother finally left her body, it was mine to keep, along with her ring, some blackened silver, a box of Jewish books. At first I thought it would be a difficult fit, but here a tuck and there a seam let out, and you'd swear it was made for me. My freckled throat, creased stomach, soft white hips. Even my thoughts at 3 a.m. are hers. I'm lying here in her body. She doesn't miss it. She likes the way I look in it, winks when I feed it her favorites. Sunday, I'll walk down the aisle at my daughter's wedding, and the thin breasts in gray silk will be my mother's. Veins in sticky hose, bunioned feet in shoes that match the dress. More and more will be hers. I'll walk past the narrow eyes of those who doubt me, safe in my mother's armor, faux pearl choker and stiff glittering clasp as their whispers weave around me. My face wearing her little smile, her scared eyes shining in triumph. Dear, I put on my list that I would read my body, so I guess I'm reading it. Ay, ay, ay. This is from a more confessional period of writing. Anyway. Actually, things have much improved since the details depicted in this poem. My body, throat puckered like crepe, right hand throbbing with arthritis, right hip permanently higher than left, right leg shorter after years of books slung from one shoulder, one breast smaller, both sagging like grandma's, shriveled around the nipples, upper arms lumpy, veins in legs varicose, back freckled from sunburn when I passed out on the beach in 1964, face creasing, still breaking out, hairs bristling from bumps I didn't start out with, nose pitted, burst capillaries on nostrils, 2 extra holes pierced in the left ear, so I'll never forget those months with Cedo. Thank God I refused the tattoo. 2 vaccination scars, shoulders stiff from fracture in 1986 when I fell on a stone floor at Cummington. Skin dotted with what, moles, age spots, melanoma that killed my father? Sagging belly, testament to fear, dieting, birth, abortion, miscarriage. Years of fighting booze and overeating still written in my flesh. Small cysts around labia, sparse pubes, not yet like my head full of gray that first appeared the year I had 2 jobs and pneumonia. Eyes needing bifocals now, no good for driving at night. Still blue and intense, tired, but my best feature. Or maybe it's my hands, strong, blunt with prominent veins. Lungs still wheezing after years of asthma and smoking. All of me still full of groans, sighs, tears, still responsive to the slightest touch, grief and desire still with me. Though I hardly ever have reason to close the curtains, naked fool for passion, and wonder if I'll live alone the rest of my time in this body, my old friend now, healed and healed again, still walking and breathing, scars faded as thin silver signatures. This poem is called Afterlife, and it's also from that same period of the late 90s. And it does something that I love the possibility of a poem doing, which is to say something and also simultaneously mean the opposite of that, and you'll hear that in the last line, or something like that. Anyway, afterlife. I'm older than my father when he turned bright gold and left his body with its used-up liver in the Faulkner Hospital, Jamaica Plain. I don't believe in the afterlife, don't know where he is now his flesh has finished rotting from his long bones in the Jewish cemetery. He could be the only convert under those rows and rows of headstones. Once, washing dishes in a narrow kitchen, I heard him whistling behind me. My nape froze. Nothing like this has happened since. But this morning, we were on a plane to Virginia together. I was 17, pregnant and scared. Abortion was waiting. My aunt's guest bed soaked with blood, my mother screaming, and he was saying, "Kids get into trouble." I'm getting it now. This was forgiveness. I think if he'd lived, he'd have changed and grown. But what would he have made of my flood of words after he'd said in a low voice as the plane descended to Richmond in clean daylight and the stewardess walked between the rows in her neat skirt and tucked-in blouse? Don't ever tell this to anyone. Sorry, Dad. I have to tell everything. Okay. Tom spoke about the poems that came out of that period of the AIDS epidemic when I was living in New York City, and my community was being decimated very rapidly. So these, well, at least one, maybe two. I'll read a poem called "Waste Not." The students who were in class yesterday heard me read it, so forgive me if you have to hear it again. And it's in this book. It's in Blue Hanuman. Is that right? Yeah, I think so. No, it was in Cold River. What am I thinking? So it's in my body. Page 59. This is a loose sonnet, unrhymed and unmetered, but it has 14 lines. Waste not. We're using every bit of your death. We're making a vice of your mouth's clenching and loosening, an engine of your labored breathing, a furnace of your wide-open eyes. We've reduced you to stock, fed you to the crowd, banked the pearl of your last anger, stored the honey of your last smile. Nothing's left in your mirror. Nothing's floating on your high ceiling. We're combing pockets, turning sleeves, shaking out bone and ash, stripping you down to desire. Your beloved has folded your house into his. I'm wading the swift river, balancing on stones. I think I know, I can read a shorter. Okay, that's what I'll do instead of inventory. This is a poem that came out of an experience of visiting parts of South India. I was there in 2000, and I wrote the poem maybe, I don't know how many years after that, 5 years after that. Processional. In Tamil Nadu, where it's still morning, where the mixed scent of burning rubber, incense, and excrement hasn't yet heated to a thing you sweat through your feet and tongue, where day is beginning to burn through the neem leaves, a long string of men snakes along a dirt route, chanting, and in their center, like a gold bead lofted on their shoulders, a man sits in a painted box, its canopy dyed bright yellow, And he too is clothed yellow, and his face upturned to the sun is smeared with turmeric. A man the color of saffron grain. He's leaning back in his high seat, and you see from your safe distance his stiff posture and open mouth. You stare as if you've never seen the dead. Francis in his smeared bedding, your father a waxwork, freakish in mortuary rouge, all the young men in varnished coffins. Each death its own strangeness, a gold face tilted to the light, yet common to all. You're in this moving line, and he is, the one you carry, the one you praise and want to spare. The line jolts forward, Jaya, Jaya, Shiva, Shambho, toward the wood and fire, and you breathe the scent of everything alive. So I'm going to read new poems, some of them unpublished, most of them unpublished. And try not to talk too much about them. Fanny is the name of my maternal grandmother, and she gets to be the title of the poem. And I'll just say that this was a mirror poem. You know, when I ran out of ideas, I thought, look in the mirror. Or actually, it didn't happen that way. I looked in the mirror, and then I thought, oh my God, that's my grandmother I'm seeing in there. So, Fanny. Praised God, Aleph by Aleph, on the one page of her one book. Signed her citizenship with X. Pressed wells into dough with the heel of her hand, oil and salt her elements, well of onions her bread signature. She herself a well, 9 bodies from one. Stood into her 70s, Oxfords, elastic stockings, satiny girdle to hold flesh in place. Just now I saw her in my mirror, worn teeth and claws, old country eyes. Or did some stranger look at me with mercy, her wind-bent beach chair planted in rocks? The turnaround. Brother, I understand you now, your cane stabbing the snow, your lurch, your halt mid-hill, your clenched monosyllable. I know the standstill, the mute glare, how pain's iron scales and writhing hair, tusks, claws, wings, kidnap a mirror. No hour, no year since our cut-short visit, car warming in the turnaround, turned to stone. Gilmore Road. When you fell in wet snow, downhill from where your car balanced all night, one wheel hanging over nothing, wind hissing secrets in the pines, your mind still making words, so this is how it happens. No one heard your sigh, or saw your ghost rise from the soaked husk of you. Wind hissed as they gathered you in, shouldered you carefully onto their truck, never having heard your music, ignorant as I of your new address. This poem has typed on in the place of the title, My Father's Tie Rack, and this morning, I guess in the spirit of how much less directly confessional the poems are becoming, I thought maybe I should just call it The Tie Rack. If anyone wants to give me any input on that, can send me a letter. My Father's Tie Rack. Back of the door to his dark closet, eye height, with clever steel pegs I could flip both ways. a row of pendulums, of tongues, words wordless, witnesses waiting to be sworn, the town's secret, a silk body, a man's plenty, a wild ache, a knot, one painted with gold mums, one with blood leaves on mud, Vishnu's skin, 20 shades of sky, white flag iris, silk sheen of a green-black snake. Which one went with him into the hole? Somewhere else, his belts. Well, the season is coming when you lose one glove and never can wear the pair again, so that was behind this. Cold air. I lost a small wool child that fit my swollen hand as close as one I'd lost before, smooth leather with a useless clasp, mine for a week. It fell without a cry and blew to limbo. I looked back up the sloping street, too late to retrace my steps. But let me tell about my hand, its joy at being naked again, touched by such cold air, I no more needed anything. Will there be time, the thought blew past, to own another pair? I'm going to read 2 more poems, and this one is called Fresco, and I was in Assisi, and in the Basilica of San Francesco there's a gorgeous painting by Cimabue of it's the sort of painting that's called a maestra, where you see the Virgin enthroned surrounded by angels and all that. And then off to one side, in a margin of the painting, was an amazing portrait of St. Francis that didn't look like a generic saint. He looked like a real person. And I stared at it for many hours, and it touched a feeling of desire that came into this poem. Fresco. I want to be that featureless dove tucked in the saint's armpit. I want to nest where his hand presses me to the rough cloth as his round wound looks out. I want to be that radiant shape, bird only if you step back to see me better. His hands and feet want to be birds too. They bow from sleeves and hem, each with its dark seed, its bloodied coin, its dove's eye open in sleep, watching. I later found out that there's a convention in portraying St. Francis of trying to show all of the stigmata. The painter has to imagine a tear in the clothing that he's wearing so that you can see that. And I think that may be what Cimabue was painting, but it's definitely in the shape of a dove. So go figure. I don't know. It's impossible to interview him at this point. And this last poem that I'm going to read is called In Heaven. And we talked a lot in class yesterday, talked a little about the writing process, and or maybe it was after class, talking with a student who, anyway, blah, blah, blah. I sometimes don't know what the poem is going to be, and I thought, because this was after Assisi, I was in Siena, and I had seen so much fabulous late medieval and early Renaissance art, I thought I wanted to write about it, and I wanted to write about angels, and there were so many different kinds of angels, and I filled a notebook, several pages of all these angels. And then suddenly realized that I had an entirely different poem to write, and the only point of connection was a memory of somebody that I have sometimes thought of as a guardian angel. And I had to sacrifice all those notebook pages, and they ended up being 2 lines opening the poem, and then half of that had to go too. The things we lose for love, anyway. So the title goes into the first line. In heaven, winged babies hover. A boy angel holding a lily brings pain. I had an angel once. His name was Max, but I lost his card after the abortion that's haunted my whole life. He shoved coins into my hand. I still feel their weight, and stood outside a phone booth, Walgreens, Chicago, holding a sign up to the beveled glass in pencil, peace of mind, while I called home. Peace, if it was that, didn't last, though I did go to college. For that, I'd like to thank him. He'd be in heaven now, with wings if they still wear them. Maybe he did know what was best for me, as they say they do in heaven. Thank you all so much for listening.